Hi there, I'm John Acorn and welcome to the Alberta Badlands and the Royal Tyrrell Museum of Paleontology. Right now I'd like to share with you some of the things that go on in the day-to-day life of a paleontologist, and especially a dinosaur paleontologist. Other paleontologists, by the way, they do pretty well the same things, only usually on a smaller scale. How's it going down there, you guys? Oh, it's going good, John. They're excavating a rare fossilized frog toenail. Should be done in about 2 weeks. The truth is, though, that paleontologists spend most of their time, like the rest of us, in offices, working at computers, talking on the phone, looking things up in the library, but nobody wants to see a video of someone sitting in an office. No, you get into paleontology because of the joy of discovery, the thrill of adventure, working outdoors, and exploring the deserts and badlands of the world. So let's leave the office behind. Let's go join the crews and see how they get the fossils out of the ground and into the displays.
These are dinosaur bone fragments, and you know, people bring them into the museum all the time. And what they don't realize is that fragments like this are of greater value if you leave them on the ground where you find them. And that's because there's an art to discovering dinosaur skeletons. Now, paleontologists call it prospecting, just like the old-time gold miners used to do. Okay, well, the first thing you gotta know is you don't just go digging anywhere. It's a waste of time. No, you look for little bones and teeth and the rocks that are the right age. And the rocks gotta be the right kind, you know, sedimentary, my dear Watson. That's funny, right? Why don't you laugh? Anyway, and they don't have too many irritating plants on them. Plants are, I don't know, just donkey food. That's what plants are. Okay, well, and then you're trying to figure out what parts are the fossils and which are the useless brown rocks. There's a rock. Look at this. You put it on your tongue, falls off. Fossils are porous. They got little holes in them. Put them on your tongue and they stick. Hey? Well, the whole idea is to find the bones while they're still in the ground, before all the rain and the snow and the ice and the wind starts busting them up. You treat every little fragment of bone like it's a clue, and you follow it uphill until you find the bones from which they has discombobulated. Right there! Ha! Eureka! That's good easy as tuning a piano. Okay, well, now it's time to call in the crew. Well, now the first step in excavating a fossil is to remove the overburden. That's the rock above the fossil. And in the old days, well, it was a piece of cake. Fire in the hole. Yeah, that was fun. But too many fossils and paleontologists were being, as we say, damaged. So, nowadays we use much more delicate tools. Tools like picks and shovels and jackhammers. 10 years of university, and I still get to use a jackhammer. Woohoo, baby! After the overburden is removed, the work becomes more tedious and more careful. Here, the paleontologists use tools like small chisels and brushes, and they apply stabilizing glue to the fossil as well. When the fossil is finally exposed, we get our first good look at it. Then it's time to put a plaster jacket on the fossil. Then the entire fossil is undercut until it rests on a pedestal of rock. The base of the pedestal is broken, and then the whole thing is flipped, and the rest of it is wrapped in plaster. When the job is done, what you've got is a plaster-wrapped package all ready to deliver to the preparation lab at the museum.
Okie dokie, well there we go, it's all packed up. Good day's work in the science of paleontology. Okay, sweetie pie, let's go. Head her on back to the Royal Tyrrell Museum. Okay, come on, that's good.
Okay, well now it's time to look at what happens to a specimen once it gets back to the museum, and it's time to complete the process of fossil preparation. Now, to look at a fossil preparator, you might think that their job is a lot like being a dentist. They wear a lab coat, they use picks and drills, they work on things that are as hard as teeth. In fact, some of them are teeth. Others are, of course, bones, fossil plants, fossil wood, fossil invertebrates, what have you. Now, Paul here is using an air scribe, which looks like a dentist's drill, but really it's a vibrating tool. It's more like a little miniature jackhammer. Here are some other tools. A toothbrush. How much more dental can you get? Another brush, a pin vise, which is a vise that holds pins, scalpel, and a dental pick. In the field, the fossil was covered with a protective jacket of plaster and burlap, and the first step in preparation is to remove one side to expose the rock inside. Once the plaster jacket has been removed, then the preparator works very carefully to remove the rock matrix from around the fossil. The sandstone that a lot of the dinosaurs in Alberta are buried in is soft and can be removed fairly easily. It's usually easy to distinguish between rock and fossil because of the difference in color. At other times, the color of the specimen and the rock can be almost identical, and both matrix and specimen are incredibly hard and well bonded together. After all, the fossil is a sort of rock itself. This makes the preparator's job much more difficult. Often the fossil can be brittle, and superb technique is needed to prevent it from being damaged. The preparator applies strengthening glue to the porous fossil bone, after which the fossil should be strong enough to withstand the strain of having the surrounding rock removed from its surface. And sometimes the fossil is best preserved by allowing the original rock to hold the specimen together. This is Mark. He's a very patient man. He's been working on this particular fossil for about a year all told. Now I want you to notice that right here on the lab bench, Mark also has some anatomical references, Xeroxes from the scientific literature, things that will help direct the preparation process so he knows exactly what he's looking at as the bone is exposed from the rock. I also want you to notice that where the bone is missing, there's plaster of Paris, and what he's done is he's sculpted that plaster to represent the missing bones in an anatomically correct fashion. Now here's a thought for you. Just think, if you should become a fossil, someone very much like a dentist might wind up working on your teeth again millions of years into the future. Yeah, just something to think about. Okay, now could you open up just a little wider there? Okay, now is that sensitive? Oh, well, I'm really sorry. Pardon me. Oh, gee, it looks like you got about 100 million years worth of plaque on these teeth. Now, I want you to come back to me after the next ice age. Make sure your family books their checkups, and you can square up with the receptionist at the front desk when you leave. Okay, thank you very much. Hi there. Welcome to the Royal Tyrrell Museum of Paleontology. The museum was named after Joseph Burr Tyrrell, a geologist who worked for the Geological Survey of Canada. And this, by the way, is not the museum. This is merely the sign. In 1884, while examining coal seams in this very area, Tyrrell stumbled upon the first dinosaur discovery in the Red Deer River Valley. The skull of Albertosaurus. Soon thereafter, fossil hunters converged on this area and they realized it was one of the richest dinosaur localities on Earth. Now, the Tyrrell Museum opened in 1985, and 5 years later, in recognition of its international importance, Queen Elizabeth II granted it the Royal Appellation, and it has since been known as the Royal Tyrrell Museum. It is the only major museum in all of Canada devoted exclusively to paleontology, and it houses one of the largest dinosaur fossil collections in the world. Today I'd like to take you on a behind-the-scenes tour to see what happens to a fossil when it arrives at the museum. So follow me, and we'll go behind closed doors where only the staff are usually allowed. From the time a fossil is discovered in the ground to the time it is displayed in the museum gallery or stored in the collection, it goes through a number of stages, and each one of those stages is interesting in its own way. Look at this place. It's like a giant warehouse for the storage of unprepared fossils. Wow. And why are they unprepared, you might ask? I mean, hey, these things are millions of years old. You would think that if they needed to be ready for something, they'd be ready by now. But of course, that's not what unprepared means. It just means that the fossils are still inside their field jackets, the protective coverings made from plaster, burlap, wooden supports, like the ones behind me here. Each specimen is given a catalog number so that information about it and its whereabouts can be kept on file. And as the years roll by, fossils pile up faster than they are worked on. That's because so many fossils are collected in a single field season. The reason for this is that once a fossil is discovered, it is also exposed to the air, and it needs to be protected from erosion. In the field, fossils deteriorate very quickly if not collected, thanks to the actions of wind, water, ice, and heat. So, it's better to collect them and store them here than it is to leave them in the harsh Badlands. Thus, any museum worth its plaster and burlap will have a huge backlog of jacketed material.
We know there's a skeleton in here. I say we go for what we know.
Decisions about which fossils should be prepared first, those are made by the curators, specialists in various areas of paleontology, and the priority list is always changing with new discoveries each year. Sometimes no one really knows exactly what's in the field jacket until it's opened up and worked on carefully in the lab. So a really good fossil that's been sitting in the ground for millions and millions of years often has to sit here for a few more before it gets its time on the lab bench. It's a super place. It's like a big old attic, and well, you just never know what you're going to find in here. Okay, what is this thing? Looks like it's got no number, and it looks like maybe an alligator head or something like that. Oh, and it opens. That's weird. Ha! Look at this. It's a ukulele.
It's an old ukulele left over from a field party. And it's still in tune. That's beautiful.
If I were a dinosaur, perhaps I'd wind up here, abandoned on a shelf, waiting for the dust to clear. I've been waiting, while eons come and go. I never thought I'd see the light of day again, oh no. Someday they'll unwrap me, and then I'll hear them scream. It's a dromaeosaurus, the best you've ever seen.
Hey, it's a dromaeosaur.
Okay, now it's time to head over to the preparation lab. Specimens are prepared here. What that means is the fossils are entirely or partly removed from the rock in which they lie.
First, they cut open the jacket that the paleontologists wrapped it in the field. Then, preparators use fine tools, hand tools if the rock is soft, power tools such as the air scribe if the rock is hard. They use various sorts of glues to strengthen the fossil, and the entire preparation process can take years for a complex specimen.
But that is not where the process ends. For really important fossils, it is necessary to make replicas of the bones and the teeth, replicas that we call casts. And for that, we go to the casting lab. This is Marilyn. She's a technician, and she is making a mold of the bone from the end of a toe of an Albertosaurus.
First, she carefully embeds half the bone in plasticine and attaches a ridge of plasticine to what will become the hidden end of the bone. This will become the pouring hole for the mold. Then she covers the bone with latex and strengthens the latex mold with cheesecloth. The mold is overlain with fiberglass, and the process is repeated on the other side. The bone is removed once the mold dries, and the finished mold is filled with a casting material, in this case, 2-part casting plastic. When the mold is removed, a perfect replica of the fossil is produced. I'll just take this over here and, oh, what do you know? It's Marilyn.
Now, you probably guessed what's happening here. Marilyn and Fred are assembling a cast skeleton of Albertosaurus. Now, did you know that over 50% of the fossils you see in the museum are actually casts? It's true, but I don't want that to diminish your appreciation of them. It doesn't mean that they're fake or that they're carvings or figments of someone's imagination. The casts are made from molds, and the molds are made from the original fossils. There are several reasons for displaying casts instead of the original fossils. For one, the original might be needed for research and can't be left on display. And museums also trade casts with each other so they can display more types of prehistoric life forms than they have in their own collections. Now remember
that fossils are bones that have turned to stone. So fossils are going to be a lot heavier than casts. Now, in old-style museums, the heavy fossils of large dinosaur skeletons, they were mounted with very heavy steel frameworks. By using casts, we can also drill holes in the cast bones and then use a hidden framework of internal steel rods to support the dinosaur skeleton. And that, in turn, allows you to mount dinosaur skeletons in lifelike positions like this one. Now, if the original fossil is not placed on display in the galleries, it continues on its exciting journey to the prepared collections area, where it falls under the watchful eyes of the collections manager. Every major museum has at least one collections manager because the task of looking after the collections is a huge one in and of itself. The prepared collections area is where fossils are stored once they're ready for research. There are about 120,000 fossils here, and they keep coming at a rate of about 2,000 per year. That makes it the biggest fossil collection in all of Canada and one of the premier collections in all of the world. Some of the specimens are individual bones and teeth, some are partial skeletons, and some are complete skeletons head to toe. About a quarter to a third of the material here is from dinosaurs, at least in terms of numbers of specimens. In terms of weight, the number is probably closer to 90%. The remainder consists of mollusks, insects, other invertebrates, fishes, amphibians, various reptiles, mammals, birds, pollen, and plants.
If I was a fossil, I would want to be prepared to have my place in the collection with others also rare. I'm proud of my own number and the wacky Latin name, waiting for the scientists to raise me up to fame. They thought they understood me when they found me in the ground. I surprised them on the lab bench with features so profound.
Because it is located among rocks from the late Cretaceous period, the Royal Tyrrell Museum is particularly rich in fossils from about 65 to 75 million years ago. The vast collections of the Royal Tyrrell Museum are used by the curators on staff. Each has a specialty. For example, there are paleontologists who discover clues about the past by studying fossilized pollen, and each finds something new in the fossils they examine. As well, over 50 paleontologists from around the world visit the museum each year. We will never complete the process of studying the fossils at the Royal Tyrrell Museum because we will never run out of questions to ask about them. Even fossils that have been studied for decades are still providing new insights. Well, now, as you walk through the galleries of the museum, I hope you've got a better sense for the science of paleontology, for all the work that goes into each and every fossil. When you look at the signs beside each of the exhibits, think about everything that has to be done, all the knowledge that has to be gained before that sign can be written. So I hope you've enjoyed your behind-the-scenes tour of the Royal Tyrrell Museum of Paleontology. That's science for you, folks, and to be honest, it's a lot harder than things like playing the ukulele.
And still hold some secrets that await analysis. Clues to what the planet did the day I fell to rest. When you go to the museum, you only see the front. behind the scenes the work goes on. Just hear those workers grunt. They've been toiling on for decades, and still the drama builds. Unraveling prehistory is truly filled with thrills. Unraveling prehistory is truly filled with thrills.
Oh, and one more thing, just because many people have been asking, I have worked with the Royal Tyrrell Museum for many, many years. In fact, I was one of the first employees of the museum, back before it had a name, before it had a building, before it was even in Drumheller. I was a preparator of Centrosaurus dinosaur brain cases. Kind of a weird job description. But I like to think that I was preparing brains back then, and I'm preparing them even now. That's what I like to think.